Hello, grade 6. This is day 7, lesson 8-5, page 359, numbers 11 through 33, the odds. Before we get started, please take a look at pages 354, 355, read them carefully, and then come back to this video and we'll talk about some example problems. Thank you. Okay, there's a number of different types of problems in this lesson, as you can tell. They all have to do with percent values. Sometimes we're adding a sales tax to the price of an item, and sometimes we're trying to figure out what the new price of an item is going to be when we reduce its price by a discount. And one other type of problem that we're going to be finding is something called percent of discount. But let's get started on one of the types of problems that exist. We're going to talk about sales tax problems. Here are two examples of them right here. Before we do this one, let's start with an even easier one. Let's imagine that you go and you buy an item that costs $12 and you live in a state that has a 6% tax. $12 and a 6% tax. Michigan has a 6% tax. So what would the total cost of the item be? Well, the first thing I would think about in my mind is, what is 6% as a decimal number? We know that 6% is 6 hundredths because percent means hundreds, and that means that we can write it as this decimal number, 0.06. Or another way to think about it is we just need to move the decimal point 2 places to the right and fill that empty spot. So 6% is the decimal number 0.06. Now, why is that helpful? Well, because here's what we're going to do with this problem. We're going to think about what 6% of 12 is first. What is 6% of 12? And that's a pretty easy problem to solve. If we change this to that decimal number, if we think of as multiplication, and we multiply it by 12. This number times this number equals two decimal place values in the original problems equals 72 cents. This amount of money, this 72 cents, is the tax that's going to get added to the price of our item. So the total cost of the item ends up being $12.72. The $12 goes to the company that you bought it from, and the 72 cents ends up in the hands of the state of Michigan because that's the tax that the state of Michigan is charging for that product. So let's try that with this problem right here. As we did over here, I need to change this into a decimal value. I'm going to move the decimal 2 places over, and when I do that, I get the number 0.0575. And we're going to multiply it by the $20 price of the item. We're trying to figure out what 5.75% of the $20 equals, just like we did over here when we were figuring out what the 6% of the $12 is. The next thing we need to do is we need to multiply this number times this number. I'm going to erase this to get it out of the way. I don't need the decimal point and the 2 zeros at the end there. Nope, that's not right. That's not a 3. That should just be a 1 right there, shouldn't it? So what do I get? There's 4 decimal place values here. I move the decimal point over 4 places. I get 1.15. This equals 1.15, or $1.15. So the item costs $20, but when we think about the sales tax is an extra $1.15. So I end up with 20 plus 115, and the actual cost of the item when we include the tax is $21.15. Let's try our next problem. Do you notice something about this percent value? It's a fractional or a mixed number percent, but that's okay. We know that 1/2 is the decimal number 0.5. And now we can move that decimal point over 2 places, and we get this decimal value for the percent. So just like we did here and with this problem over here, we're going to think about what number is 6.5% of the $130. And of course, means multiplication. When we multiply those two numbers together, let's see what we get. There's 3 decimal places over here, so let's move the decimal point over 3 places. And what number is that? Well, that's the number, $8.45. I need to take that $8.45, because that's the amount of the tax, and I need to add it to the 130. And when I do that, don't forget to line up the decimal points, we get a total of $138.45. So, when you're trying to figure out what the total cost of an item is, and you're given an amount of money and a sales tax, first figure out what the decimal value of that percent is, multiply it by the price of the item to get your tax, and then add it to the price of the item to get your total cost of whatever it is that you are buying. That's the first kind of problem. Second kind of problem, what do we mean by a discount? A discount is when you reduce the price of something. In this particular case, we had an item that's $185, and we're reducing it by an amount of 33%. The question is, how do we figure that out? Well, it's very similar to this kind of problem, except instead of adding numbers together at the end, we're going to be subtracting some numbers at the end. First thing we're going to do is change this into a decimal number, 0.33. And we're going to multiply it by the 185. We're trying to figure out what 33% of the $185 is. What is 33% of 185? We changed the 33% to 0.33. Let's see what it equals. Oh, that's a lot of 5s. 2 decimal place values in the original problem. Move the decimal point 2 places over. That gives me an amount of $61.05. Now remember, I said we're reducing this by 33%. This is a discount situation. So what we do is we take the $185 and we subtract from it the $61.05, because we're discounting the price. We're making the price smaller by 33%. And the answer I get is $123.95. This is a discount problem. We first figured out what 33% of the price of the item is. Then, once we did that, we subtracted that from the original price and came up with $123.95. Let's do another discount problem over here. What if I have an item that costs me $200, but I find out that the store is willing to discount the price 40%? What would be the new price of the item? Well, first, we're going to change this into that decimal number and multiply it by the price of the item. This is a pretty easy problem. I happen to know that the answer to that is 80. We then take the original price, the $200, and we subtract the 80 from it. When we do that, we get a new price of $120. So a $200 item, if we discount it by 40%, is going to give us a price of $120. Now, let's look at this problem right over here. We have an item that's $86, and it's now on sale for $60.20. What is the percent of the discount? Well, this kind of problem is similar to what we did in a previous lesson. Remember that lesson where we talked about percent of change? And we said that that's equal to the amount of the change over the original amount. That's the formula we're going to be using with this problem. What was the amount of change here? We went from 86 to $60.20. Well, in order to find the amount of change, we're going to have to do a subtraction problem. 0 minus 0. Uh-oh, can't do this. We'll borrow next door. 10 minus 2. 5 minus 0. 8 minus 6. We get an amount of change of $25.80. The original amount was $86. If you recall, we said when we talked about percent of change problems, we're going to make the left side of this x over 100, and we're going to solve the proportion. When we solve this proportion, the answer is going to be that x equals 30%. Let's see how that happens. 25.80 times 100 equals, two decimal places, 2,580. We're going to take that 2,580 and we're going to divide it by the remaining number of 86. 86 goes into this 3 times, and it's exactly 3 times. That's why x is 30%. In this case, we had a percent of discount of 30%. Let's try it with another problem that's similar to this. What if the original price of the item was $300, but now the price of the item has become $250? What is the percent of discount in this particular case? Well, we're going to do it similarly to what we did before. The percent of the change is equal to the amount of the change, which was $50, over the original amount of $300. We're going to change the left side to x over 100. And we're going to solve for x. One of the things I'm noticing here is I could simplify this down. 50 over 100 can be much easier to work with as 50/30ths or 1/6. If I solve this problem, x ends up being 16 and 1/6%. 1 times 100 divided by 6. Nope, I'm wrong. Goodness, I'm sorry. It's 16 and 2/3. My apologies. Or 16.6 repeating. So that's another example of a percent of discount problem. We use percent of change equals the amount of the change over the original amount. And then we solve for the value of x like we did the other day. Let's take a look at some of the problems that are on page 356 between numbers 4 through 10 in the guided practice. Let's start with number 4. What if we have a notebook that's $2.95 and we want to apply a 5% tax to that? What's the new price of the item going to be? This is problem 4. Well, we have to think about what is 5% of the $2.95. What is 5% of the $2.95? I changed 5% to a decimal number. Of is multiplication. Let's see what this equals. If I multiply the two numbers together, I have, 4 decimal places. So I got to go way out to here with my decimal point. What amount of money is that? Well, if we only saw this amount, you'd say it's 14 cents, wouldn't you? But the very next digit is a 7, so we're going to round this up to 15 cents. That 15 cents needs to be added to the $2.95 because remember, the 15 cents is a tax. The total for this particular problem is $3.10. The price of the item is $2.95. The tax is 15 cents, so the total is $3.10. Let's try number 6. Number 6 is a discount problem. We have a skateboard that's $119.50, but the store decides to put it on sale at 20% off, a 20% discount. What's the new price of the skateboard? Well, we need to think about 20% of the $119.50. Notice I changed the percent into a decimal number and we're multiplying it by the price of the item. Let's bring that point to 0 right here. Let's do our multiplication here. We've got 4 different decimal places, so I got to go over 4 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4. What amount of money is that? Well, that's $23.90. Now remember, this is a discount problem. Our price of the skateboard is going to end up being smaller than this. So therefore, I have to take this number and the price of the skateboard and subtract them. And the price of the skateboard ends up being, oh goodness, what am I doing? I'm sorry, this is not right. The price of the skateboard ends up being $95.60. I'm sorry, that's it right there. So 20% off the price of this skateboard would be $95.60. Okay, your assignment is 11 through 33, the odds. Yes, you may use calculators today for this assignment. If you have any questions, please give me a call. Thank you and have a good day.